Hi there, Dave. Dave, it's great to chat to you. I've known Dave for probably about 21 years or something, I think now, something like that. Quite a few
Long
years.
time.
Anyway,
Yeah, yeah.
I know neither of us look old enough. The annoying thing is
Great years.
the annoying thing is Dave looks exactly the same, and I've aged. um, and Dave and I have also been a couple of times in the same prayer group. One when we were sort of in our early 20s, and more recently now. And as many of you know, one of the passions of the School of Mission is to encourage Christians to share their faith in Jesus through deeds and words, and actually put it into practice. And so I was saying to Dave at one time, I'd just love to do something that would get Christians a bit out of their comfort zone and to just realise that God is faithful. And Dave, do you want to tell us a little bit? And so I've done something like that. And Dave told us about his random trip to Bulgaria. And I thought, I'd love more people to hear that. So without further ado, Dave, tell us about your trip to Bulgaria.
Sure. Yeah. So it was planned and unplanned. So it was organised by the Christian student charity Fusion, which a friend of mine was working for at the time, and they sent 100 teams. I think they sent about 96 teams across Europe, and they sent 7 teams from Europe to the UK. And when I say send, effectively what they did is they told us to be at an airport on a whatever day, on a Friday. And then when you got there, you were given an envelope, you opened your envelope, and that had your plane tickets and your boarding passes for a flight to somewhere in Europe. So I say I went to Bulgaria. I didn't know that I was going to Bulgaria until I opened that envelope at 6 o'clock on a Friday morning at Luton Airport. So we went, team of 4 of us, flew out, and then the thing is, when you don't know where you're going, you don't have time to prepare. So we knew that we were going somewhere, we didn't know where. So in the first instance, it was like, first of all, I'm not sure what I'm going to pack. Am I going to a hot country, a cold country, or what's that? So we packed quite kind of light. We also didn't take any credit cards or anything with us. We had about 20 quid each in local currency, which was also in the envelope. And that was it. So we flew out, and the only thing we knew at the time was that we had a flight back 3 days later, which we would catch. So so that was that.
In many ways, it echoes when Jesus sent out in Luke 9 and Luke 10, when Jesus sent out both the 12 and then the 72, that idea where he didn't even let them take a clean shirt. I mean, that's like, you weren't allowed to go with extra money and sandals or whatever, kind of don't greet people on the road. Jesus sent them out really with nothing other than the message and his commission, really.
Yeah. And that was very much what it was like. So, we arrived in Bulgaria with a little bit of money to last us for 3 days, without taking a lot of stuff as well, and that was it. And so the kind of I guess the mission of Fusion, and the reason that they kind of started to do this thing was they saw a net. They had a prophecy of a net over Europe. And Christians, they were sending Christians out to repair the net. So the net was all of the kind of the good work that student charities and Christian charities have been doing across Europe. And effectively, we were going to strengthen that work. So we didn't really have an agenda apart from that. We decided amongst the 4 of us when we were at the airport looking up where, what's in Bulgaria, and we flew into Sofia and what it is we could do to fill our time. The first mind was to connect with a local church. That was important to all of us. And so, so we arrived. We had a first challenge of trying to get from the airport, which into the city centre, which was always a challenge on the basis that you fly with a budget airline and the airport's always miles away. And so we tried to get a lift, prayed to if someone would give us a lift. That didn't kind of come through. And so we ended up using a little bit of money just to get a bus into town. And that was okay. And that kind of set the trend and the pace and the kind of expectation for us that actually we're going to need God to come through for us and to provide for us, and we're going to need to pray for things, because we don't have enough money to sustain us for these 3 days, if you like. So we quickly established a kind of a cycle of prayer, just kind of praying for what we got to provide for us. The first thing was accommodation. That's big, and it gave me some insight into, actually, if you've got no place to, if you're homeless or you've got no place to live, then it can be quite a scary and a lonely and isolating place. And then obviously kind of food and all that kind of stuff, which was less important. But also that God would use us in what he wanted us to do and where we should go, because, you know, Sofia, the capital of Bulgaria, is quite a big place. So we got into the center, and then that's when we really started to pray about what it is we should do. So that was that. We found a church. We went there. We spent some time just kind of in silence, in prayer, just asking God to kind of to be with us. There was services and that kind of thing going on, which was a very different culture as well. You know, quite an Orthodox culture out there. With Bulgaria, is not only is the language different that we didn't understand, but also it's they don't use the Latin alphabet, so that's different as well. So you can't even kind of read the words to pronounce them. We had no idea even how to pronounce anything. So we did that. The first thing that we decided to do was to get onto the social media, just to see if we could connect with Christians that were in Sofia, in Bulgaria, to see if they could, catch up with us and show us around or provide for us or whatever. And so we just did that. We had a day where we were in the city. We saw a few sites. We chatted to some local people. There were some kids on the street that were break dancing and playing some music and that sort of thing. So we chatted to them, and we could explain kind of why we were in Bulgaria. Did they know anywhere that we might be able to stay? Did they, and that was quite faith building, those kind of opportunities, because there were a number of people that were like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And it gave us the opportunity to just kind of say, this is why we're here. We believe in a God that provides. We believe in a God that loves us. We believe in, and it kind of forces opportunities for you and for you to take, and we would just be able to share kind of a bit about God to people that probably would never find themselves in a church on Sunday morning. So that was good. We had a great first day until the evening. When it got to the evening, we still didn't have anywhere to stay, and it's starting to get dark, and you're like, okay, we've had a nice time, but really, God, we need somewhere to stay, and that was our number one priority. And so we were on social media, we were on Twitter, putting out messages, and this is where the story gets a little bit kind of crazy, and this is where you see God's provision and faithfulness, and this is where you see it happening, and this is where we were out of our comfort zone. So what happened is we got a message back from a girl who called Ruby, that she was in Bulgaria the week before, and she said, I was there and I met some Christians, and these are their numbers, give them a call, because they they'll be able to help you. So like, fantastic, God, thank you so much for providing for us, that's great. So we called the number. They're out of town, but they're like, we've got another mate, maybe they can help you. So called them. They weren't available or whatever. And so then we quickly went from this, we're all sorted, to actually, no, we're not. And so we kept, kind of messaging and calling and that sort of thing. Anyway, gets to 10 o'clock at night, it's dark, nowhere to stay, not enough money to stay anywhere really. And I get this contact from a guy called Ivan, who lives in Sofia, and that came through one of the contacts on the internet and on Twitter. And so I call him up, and I'm like, "Hi, Ivan. You don't know me, but I've been chatting to this person that knows you, and you live in Bulgaria, and we're Christians as well, and we really need someone to stay. Can you help us out?" And then he was like, "Oh, sorry, you've just woken me up. What, say that again?" I was like, "Oh, I'm really sorry. Didn't mean to wake you up, but you know." And he's like, "Oh, let me see what I can do." He's like, "I've got nowhere that you can stay, but I'll see what I can do." Anyway, he rings around at 11 back, and he said, um, I've got, I'm sorry, I've got nothing, for you." And we were like, "Okay then." So then we were like, "Okay, let's just find somewhere. Let's blow all our money and hope that God provides for us tomorrow. Clearly it's not worked out for us today." So we went to this. We found on like Booking.com or whatever this hostel that was quite sketchy, but was like really cheap. So we thought, that's all we can afford. It's all of our money, but let's just stay there. At least we'll be, okay tonight. So anyway, so we walk to this hostel, and it is not a nice part of town. There are swastikas on the walls. Is really run down. And I want to say the road was called maybe Haristo Boulevard, something like that. And where we went was right at the top, like number 74 or something like that. And we get there, and the guy that is running it said, there's 4 of you. And we're like, yeah, there's 4. And he's like, no, this is only for 2 people. And he's like, 4 people's extra is more money. And we're like, but we can't afford 4 people. We don't have any money. That's all we have. He's like, nope, don't care. So we were like, okay, well, let's book 2, and then we can get another. Then we'll sneak a couple in kind of when we, later. So he gives us the key, and we're at number 74, and he sends us all the way down to like number 3. So we're walking all the way down the road, and thinking about, okay, what we're going to do. And we get to number 3 or whatever, and we go in, and the guy had driven down the road quicker than we'd walk. 4 of us go in. He's like, no, only 2 of you. You need to pay more money. So we were like, okay, what are we going to do now? And so we left the 2 girls in the room, and then the 2 lads kind of, we went out, and we were trying to think of a plan, and we were scoping the place out and waiting for him to go. And so we're there kind of like 11 o'clock at night, midnight, in this really difficult situation where we were in a really sketchy part of town. The girls felt a little bit unsafe in this thing, and the guy that ran the place was sort of hiding in the lounge. It was like a 2-bedroom apartment, if you like, but he sublet it. And so the girls were in one room, and there was these 2 Polish lads in another room that we didn't know about. And so this guy was in the lounge, basically kind of, he didn't trust us to go away and not come back. So he was basically keeping guard to try and get more money out of us. So we were kind of outside. Anyway, these 2 Polish lads come out, and we explained to them what's going on. And they're like, well, we're just going to go down and get some food. We'll buy we'll buy you a drink if you want. And we were like, yeah, okay then, thanks. So we go down to the thing, and we're having a beer with these 2 Polish guys we've only just met, explaining the whole kind of our day, why we're doing it, the love of God, Jesus, all of that kind of stuff. Just, just to be able to just speak life into them, really, speak faith into them. And so we did that, and the guy's still there, and the girls messaging us. Anyway, so we're like, okay, we don't know what to do. We can't really stay there. The girls felt quite unsafe, so we were just praying, and we just started to pray, and then Ivan calls me up, and he's like, Dave, I've got someone for you. He said something like, my sister's husband's work colleague is in Sofia, and she's got a place where you can stay. And we were like, brilliant, we'll take that. So anyway, he's like, I'll call her, and I'll get her to call you. And so I'm like, okay. So then we're there, and then I get this phone call from this American girl called Liz, and she says, oh yeah, hi, I don't know Ivan, but I know of Ivan, and he said you need somewhere to stay. And we're like, yes, please, And she's like, great. She's like, where are you? And we were like, oh, well, we're in on Harista Boulevard. And she's like, okay, that's fine. And she's like, whereabouts? We're like, I'm number 3, we think. And she's like, oh, okay, then that's fine. She's like, I know where that is. This is what you need to do. She's like, check out that hostel place, walk across the road, and then wait for me there. And I'll be there. I'll be like 5 minutes. And we're like, okay, brilliant. So it's like 2 o'clock in the morning right now. And we cross the road, and we wait there. And this girl pulls up, and she's like, hi, I'm Liz. Spoke to you on the phone. And we're like, oh, Liz. And she's like, don't worry. I know, I've heard about your day. We've got somewhere for you to stay. And we're like, okay, great. And she's like, and here it is. And we're like, here's what? And she's like, this is where you're going to stay. And we're like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, this is actually the office for InterVarsity in Sofia. And turned around, put a key in the door, opened the door. We went up 3 flights of stairs, and then there was this awesome studio apartment with chairs that turned into beds, and it was just kind of, it was incredible, because God had led us to that place, not in the easiest way, because there a lot had happened that day, but ultimately, like, it ended with him providing for us. You know, we had a great night sleep. Liz turned back up in the morning with some watermelon for breakfast, and she took us out, and it was just that kind of that God providing. She's like, you can use this all weekend, no problem. I'm like, brilliant. And so then once that happened, and we had that that opportunity to kind of to stay, it took the pressure for us to be able to kind of step out in faith a little bit more and do some other stuff. So caught up with Ivan in the day. He was like, I've got a couple of days, and so we hung out with him. And then we went to a Christian gathering. There was a like a church conference there, so we went there, and Ivan translated for us, which was amazing. And then we just spent our time just checking out Sofia, spending time with Ivan, meeting some new people, explaining what we were doing, talking about faith, and then on the Sunday we went to church with Liz and sang some songs in English, because they had the same tune as the ones that they translated into Bulgarian. So we kind of we just felt the kind of that peace and the presence of God of, we're Christians in different communities and different churches, but it's kind of one God, one faith, one baptism, and that sort of thing. And it was just incredible.
So I'm guessing what you're saying is that pretty terrifying at times, pretty worrying. Yeah. But actually, God comes through, and your testimony is that God is that God maybe called you to get out of the boat and is not comfortable, but was faithful.
Yeah, exactly. And also, it wasn't just the big highs and the big lows. It was every time we stepped out there, it was like God had prepared that and planned it for us. So we were, in that time from evening to going to that sketchy hostel where we were really trying to find something, we bumped into an American guy called Brian, who and he's like, oh yeah, my wife owns a travel shop. He's like, you would be able to stay there, but they've got some thing going on tonight. So you kind of, well, oh, cool. But he's like, if you want a drink or something, we can hang out. So yeah, so we sat down, we had a drink with Brian, and he told us about how he was an atheist and all that kind of stuff, which was interesting. When we got back to when we flew back to the UK and we connected with Ivan, we put some photos up on Facebook and that sort of thing, and Ivan was like, how do you know Brian? And we were like, we bumped into him in Sofia and we chatted to him. And we're like, how do you know Brian? And he's like, oh, I know him through a friend, and it seemed like God had connected all those dots already. And then we were just kind of, he was using us in that whole thing. And, I don't know kind of where Brian is now or kind of what's going on with him. But, I trust in faith that one day he'll remember that conversation, and actually it might be a little bit to his journey to faith.
And so it's that thing of actually, when we give God our time and we step out in faith, God is faithful. God uses us. We don't always know the end from the beginning. We don't quite know what's going to happen with the little bit that we do, but actually I guess one of the things is it's worth doing. It's worth doing. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So it was incredibly faith building for us, incredibly. So um, just yeah, it was uncomfortable. Of course, it was scary at times, and there were sometimes you thought I don't think I don't think I ever question God in terms of I know he exists. I know he's there. I know that he's for me, and I believe in those promises, and my faith is strong. But there's still an element of God. What are you trying to teach me, or what are you doing here? I don't understand it, and I don't like that, because I want to understand it, and I want to be in control of this, and I'm not in control, and I know you're in control, but that doesn't help how I feel right now. And so that it was kind of faith building for us to just have to accept that. And that was like, I'm not in control of this, I can't be in control of it, so I can't worry about it, I've just got to to go with it. And there were other things. The really the crazy kind of thing of it was when I we connected with Ivan. We found out that we had loads of mutual friends, and he went to university in Plymouth with some of my friends, and so we had all of that kind of that history. And actually, the girl, do you remember Ruby, the girl on the on Twitter that responded to us? It turns out that she goes to the church that I used to go to, so we're both part of Coastline Vineyard, and probably at the same time. So I was like, how do you know all these people? And she's like, well, I know them from church. And I'm like, but I went to that church for 3 years at the same time. And so we inevitably would have been in the same room at the same time, and just not. And it was just amazing at how small the world became,
Yeah. And God owns. What's it? J. John said, God owns all the donuts. God owns us all.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and if you ever questioned, if you ever question anything, you look back and you just saw, this is God's faithfulness, this is God's hand and direction on my life. So, brilliant. Yeah.
So as we try and encourage Christians to step out and maybe leave the comfort zones and leave just the consumerist idea of just Sunday morning and what can church get out of us, I guess your advice would be, go for it. Take a step out of the boat. It's worth it.
Yeah.
I'm putting words in your mouth.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And I would say that if you step out in faith, and there were when we got back, all the other teams, some had brilliant experiences, some had difficult experiences, so it was so variable, but we all came back in one piece. We all came back with a story, whether that was a lesson that we'd learn or God's undeniable faithfulness in a great time. And I just think that my faith has been changed, kind of forever changed because of that experience. And it's, don't get me wrong, it's not something that I particularly want to do every day. That level of uncomfortableness at times isn't something that I want to experience every day. But actually, I'm thankful for that experience, and I look for those other experiences, because that's where I grow. That's where God shapes me. That's where I see his kind of faithfulness and provision, just for me, let alone what he can do through me and through the team for those that don't yet know him. So yeah, do it. If you don't do it for yourself, then just think about those that you've got the opportunity to help kind of shape and change their lives for the love of Jesus.
Brilliant, Dave. Thank you so much. That was incredible. That was really good, and I'm sure that your story will bless lots of other people. So thank you. Just to close with a quote I heard someone say. They said they wanted a faith that will make them gulp rather than yawn, and your story is a beautiful illustration of that. Thank you so much.
Well, mate, I'll let you know next time we go. And come along, yeah.